please do post your questions in the Q&A or the chat, and we will answer them when we see them, or during the Q&A at the end of today's presentation. And so I'm also starting to think that we need to keep the full hour today. So maybe we should go ahead and get started.
All right, I'm ready if you're ready.
Take it away. Yeah, let's go.
All right, thank you, Lisa, and thank you all for joining us today. I am Aaron Calloway. I'm joined by Chris Hamrick. Chris, do you want to do a quick intro?
Sure. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Hamrick, and I'm a solution consultant here at ServiceNow.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Chris. And as I mentioned, this is Aaron Calloway. I'm Director of Global Risk and Resiliency Transformation. And we're here to talk to you about all the awesome new capabilities coming out in the latest releasing in Quebec. So excited to walk you through that, and also talking about some industry trends as well. So here we are, new stuff, awesome capabilities being released in the store. It's really great to be part of such an innovative team, and customers and colleagues bringing all these things together. And it really is because of not just our team, but because of our customers that makes our products great. We really value the input and the collaboration and the community that we have here with ServiceNow and within the ServiceNow BCM capabilities. So here's where we are today, kicking off some of the business continuity management. And Chris Hamrick will take you through a live demonstration of the items to come. And we also will be joined by Ashwin to walk us through future capabilities as the BCM product manager. On April 1st, we'll be talking about the Cybersecurity Accelerator. And then in April 8th, awesome to talk about the regulatory change management and all the additional capabilities that are released with that as well. And then finally, what we have on the roadmap right now is April 15th, talking about audit, policy, and compliance. So as I mentioned, I want to talk about some industry trends. So I think we've all been on Zoom calls, Zoom birthday parties, Zoom happy hours. We're probably all Zoomed out. And you know, everything still, as it says, still looks slightly different. And the world is slightly different. And I think there's some, you know, I'm a silver lining type person. I believe that there's a lot of lessons learned, some good things that have come out of this, you know, unfortunate pandemic. And I think a lot of us are probably worried about or tired about talking about the pandemic and about things moving forward. But some of the positive things that are coming out of it is that we've all been able to react and respond. We've all been able to adjust and to keep businesses going, and to be probably more empathetic towards our colleagues and how people are working through these things. Everyone has their different struggles, and everyone has different ways of working through these things. But what I'm also seeing within the folks that I talk about, and within some of the executive briefings that I've been in, is that companies are open for change, right? It's open, right? We want to figure this out. Where is the lessons learned coming out of this? People are open to do things differently. And that's also really hard, is change is hard. And over the years, being in the consulting world, one of the books that I've read was The Innovator's Dilemma. And really what that talks about is becoming change agents. And some ways of becoming a change agent includes a crisis or a pandemic. Who knew that a pandemic would come around and have it last? You know, it's a long enduring situation. But something that's long, as they say, it takes 30 days to change a habit. Well, you know, we're in this pandemic for much longer than that, and habits have been changed. The other thing that happens is someone has come and gone in an organization, someone gets fired, someone gets hired, that causes change. And then finally, system implementations. And the whole process of a system implementation really encourages change within organizations. And so we want to look at these things and how can we take advantage of some of these difficult situations that we've all been into and you know, move forward. So you all aren't alone. I like to provide some facts with some of the opinions and anecdotal information that I've seen. And this coming out of Gartner is that they're saying 69% of the board of directors indicate that they're going to accelerate their digital business. Well, that to me sounds like a lot of change, right? Moving from paper-based or informal processes to digital processes that help build efficiencies and accountability within organizations. Well, if you're doing that within your business, doesn't it make sense to do that within the resiliency of your business? How can we work together with these larger corporate initiatives to make change happen and to build in efficiencies and to build in continuity and resiliency within the fabric of your organization? And that's what we do within ServiceNow. We are a workflow tool. We digitize processes. Another piece of fact that I like to bring to the table is was completed by Boston Consulting Group. I've seen similar analyses by McKinsey. And really it talks about resilient organizations come out on top. And this is probably not a surprise to you, but the more resilient you are, the more that you understand your business and what's critical, the quicker you're going to be able to react and respond to a bad situation, right? You're going to have information coming in quicker. You're going to be able to identify how that situation is affecting your business and what needs to be addressed first. And because we plan for it, we exercise for it, and that will allow us to start the healing process or the recovery speed that much quicker. And then as we come out of it, we're going to be able to innovate where other companies are just struggling to get back to where they were. And so that's the big difference between a resilient organization and an organization that may not have the emphasis on it. And then I just have a couple more slides here, and I'll pass it over to Chris, but this is how we see it happening and how some of the innovations that we're bringing to the market within the ServiceNow business continuity management arena is that we embed resiliency into day-to-day operations. So if you look on the side, here's just a sample of some of the ServiceNow capabilities, from IT service management to security operations to customer service to financial operations management. So the existing capabilities span IT to operations to human resources. And when one of those areas within the business kicks off a workflow, we blend in risk and resiliency into those workflows. So if someone wants to kick off a new application because it's the right for the business, we insert a resiliency piece to that workflow to say, hey, does this application need a DR plan, or how critical is it? What are the upstream and downstream effects if this application goes down? So day one, we're thinking and talking about resiliency. Similar, if there's a new process that comes or goes within an organization, you buy a new organization or a new entity you're trying to transition in. All these workflows that the businesses run on today will have a little bit of resiliency built in, which is really what we're talking about. Is it's part of the fabric. And I'm just going to leave you with this, and then have Chris show you the nice, bright, new, shining capabilities within the business continuity management capabilities. But here's where you all can join us. So there's a ton of information that's out there today within the risk business unit that business continuity falls under. Look into our community section, look into our Ask the Experts. There's just a plethora of information that's generally available for organizations and people that just want to learn more, or they want to figure out how they can automate and digitize their BCM processes on an enterprise-grade platform such as ServiceNow. So I will be monitoring the chat while Chris takes over. So Chris, I'm going to hand the baton per se over to you, just a few states away. And if you could take us through the new BCM capabilities.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you, Aaron. And good morning, good afternoon, everyone on the line with us. So again, my name is Chris Hamrick, and I'm a solution consultant here at ServiceNow. And as Aaron mentioned, we're really excited to talk about the new features that were recently released as part of Quebec. And obviously, business continuity is a very hot topic right now. And, all of the recent events going on are proving how critical it is to have tested resiliency plans in place. So we're going to start off today by talking about what's new with our business impact analysis. And the business impact analysis is part of that assessment process. So it goes hand in hand with our other risk assessments that are going on across the organization. And the idea here is really to identify our most critical services, processes, assets, so on and so forth, and really start to understand how an impact to those functions is going to impact the greater organization. So with Quebec, we've added quite a new features within the BIA, and mainly around technical impact assessments. So the first feature is really geared around understanding, how critical data is to the organization. So what we've done is we've built an recovery point objective, also known as the RPO, or a data loss assessment. And this is really going to be leveraged to ensure that the maximum tolerable data loss for a particular function or asset is not exceeded. And we generally are going to conduct these technical type assessments on our most critical technology assets or configuration items. The next key feature is really the ability to also classify and select the impact on data confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The third key feature is additional flexibility within our dependency group. So as we assess various dependencies on critical assets, we've provided a very simple way to modify whether or not an impact category needs to contribute to recovery time objectives or recovery point objectives. And then last but not least, we've also provided some capabilities to archive your BIA. So as part of that BIA lifecycle, you may archive legacy BIAs as well. So we've provided some of that feature out of the box as well. So now what I'm going to do is we'll actually jump to the live system here, and I'll walk you through what some of those new BIA features look like. So you all may remember our new BCM workspace, which was released earlier or last fall as part of Paris. So same great workspace user experience. So I'm going to jump right into a business impact analysis that is really focused around assessing a key application. So in this case, we're assessing our SAP CRM application. Now, within this BIA, you'll notice we've added some additional metrics within our impact assessment result card here. So when we choose to do a BIA, if we choose a template that is focused on assessing in a technical asset, we will now present some additional RPO assessment capabilities. And as part of that, we also will have an updated results where we can start to see what is that recovery point objective. And then as an admin, a BCM admin, we may also need to adjust that RPO. So traditionally, your BIA focused on business processes and business services. That's really going to focus on your traditional impacts that you see that's following industry best practices. So that's going to focus on things like revenue impacts, reputational impacts, legal impacts, so on and so forth. And what we're doing here, and I'll just complete one of these, is really identifying the disruption duration. So at what point is it going to be a low impact, moderate impact, high impact? So we'll just go in and we'll select some options here. So maybe we'll say 24 hours is a low impact, but as the disruption goes on, we're going to start to see greater impact. So maybe at 1 week's time, when we look at revenue impact for this particular application, it's going to be a high impact on the organization. So we still have the same RTO impact questionnaire as part of the assessment. You'll also notice we have the RPO impact assessment here. So this is where, again, we're really going to focus in on those key assessment questions to evaluate and ultimately determine the recovery point objective. So how critical is the data? What's the value of this data? So we've added this out of the box, and it does come with some standard type questions out of the box as well. But as an organization, you can expand on those types of questions to meet your specific requirements. So we may look at, data value, for example. what is the value of this data? And again, we can go in and respond, and we can say, well, for this particular application, the value of this data is going to be pretty high. So we may say, okay, this is important data to the organization, and we may complete that. The second question that is commonly asked by organizations is, how frequently does the data change for this asset? And this is really going to kind of be leveraged by our IT groups. That way they can compare, what type of backup and recovery policies in place. Are we doing replication for the underlying infrastructure hosting this particular application? So all of this can be used by other teams as well. So we can go in, same type of response. We'll say, what's the data frequency change? We might say, that's medium. It changes, but it's not changing rapidly in our environment. So again, we'll say that. Now, you'll notice as I've started completing some of these assessment questions, it started to populate our metrics. So we have our recovery time objective. That's based on that maximum tolerable impact. And then we have our recovery point objective. So in the background, we have some logic that's calculating, what that RPO should be based on our responses to the data value and the data change frequency question. And again, that can all be adjusted to meet any specific requirements. Now, in addition to this, as I mentioned before, we're also going to capture those key CIA type details as well. So within our details, you also notice down here, we have our options. So we can actually determine, what is the data impact for confidentiality. So again, we can start to specify this and populate this as well, integrity, availability, so on and so forth. Now, again, this type of information is going to be very critical, not only to our business continuity and our disaster recovery teams, but it's also going to be leveraged by our IT support teams as well. Again, understanding the value and how critical a system is and the data stored on that system is going to be very important to the organization. And then last but not least, within our dependency assessments, as I mentioned before, we've added the capability to go in and determine what types of dependencies are contributing to a recovery time objective or a recovery point objective. So essentially in the BIA, we want to understand our dependencies, and we want to specify whether or not, if we lose a particular vendor or we lose a particular server, how quickly do we need that item recovered in? Now, for some areas, like if we were to look at hardware, you'll notice that we can also specify a required data backup. So even though we're doing an RPO assessment on this particular application, we may want to specify a particular recovery point objective for our hardware as well. So these are really the key features within the BIA. Now, if I go ahead and we'll just continue this through the life cycle. So I'm going to go ahead, submit this for approval, and we'll approve this. You'll notice that my functional buttons are updating based on where we're at in the workflow. So my state now is in an approved state. And you'll notice now we have the option, if we choose to do so, to actually archive this BIA. So essentially, we're not deleting it or removing it from the system. We're going to archive it. That way, we have it for historical purposes or for audit purposes as well. Now, how we manage this is quite simple, and it can be done by our business continuity management admins. So I'm going to quickly go in and show you where we would make some of these changes. So we're going to do this in primarily two areas. So the first is when we look at our various templates. In context to the BIA, we may have an application technical impact assessment, a business process assessment, a workplace assessment, so on and so forth. So this is where we're going to be able to determine the types of impact categories, the dependencies that we want to assess. And then we can also go in and specify whether or not we want to include the ability to analyze, confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information as part of the analysis. You'll also notice that for each template, we're going to specify the primary element that we're assessing. So this is really what's going to drive whether or not we include the RPO assessment as part of the BIA. So if we look, this is actually pointed to applications. So if I go and look at where I manage that element definition in the system, there's a simple field there that says, does this require data backup? Yes or no? And if it is yes, then we will present that RPO assessment as part of the BIA. So pretty simple, straightforward for our BCM admins to manage those features and functionality. So now I'm going to jump back. And now what I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time talking about some of the new planning features that were released. So the first feature that we've released is the ability to really focus in on how you want your plan to flow. And we refer to this as kind of our plan authoring type. And really the goal here is to be scalable, to meet different program requirements, as well as work with programs that are kind of just getting started in their journey, or programs that are at a very mature level. So the plan authoring gives you that flexibility without having to make a lot of configurations. So basically what that means is you may have a program that is just getting started and they're not really ready to leverage data on the platform, or use a relational database. They may just want to document their plans and what they're going to do at time of an event. So we'll give them that option to simply say, we just want documentation capability. For a program that is, more mature, they may be focusing on how do we react and how do we recover during specific scenarios. So they've built out their program, they understand what's critical, and now they're focusing in on different scenarios. So how do we recover if we have a pandemic scenario? How do we react and recover if we have a cyber event, and so on and so forth? So a mature organization is going to be planning in that way. We've also added some ability to archive our plans. So same type of feature you saw with the BIA. We can now archive our plans and store those in the system. Last but not least, we've made some out of the box linkages, tighter alignment between what we're identifying as part of the BIA and what gets ported over into our plans, as well as a closer linkage between building out scenarios and strategies, and then defining specific recovery tasks for those specific strategies. So a lot of great planning features here as well. So again, we're going to jump into the system, and I'll show you guys what that looks like. So we've got a plan here. This is again our SAP. This is a disaster recovery plan. But keep in mind, the features are going to be able to be used regardless of the plan type. So whether it's a business continuity plan, a supply chain continuity plan, a crisis management plan. So the first thing that you'll notice here, we'll go into the scope of our plan, is that now when we add an application to our plan, we're going to bring over some of the key attributes that we identified as part of the BIA. So our recovery time objective and our recovery point objective. And you'll also see the record. So what was the most recent BIA that was completed and approved? And that's what's going to drive what you see here. And then obviously that information is going to be leveraged to prioritize your recovery efforts. So you may have a plan with a scope that includes multiple services or multiple processes or applications, and we're going to want to know that detail and information to help us prioritize our recovery. So that's the first piece, is bringing in that type of information. The second key thing is looking at our loss scenarios. So we rolled out this functionality with the Paris release, where you can build different scenarios and have various strategies. So if we go in and we look at loss of business applications, for example, here, one, we can see all the related asset dependencies. So within the scope of the plan, when we talk about loss of a business application, what are those dependencies? Or when we talk about loss of a location, what are those locations that we physically depend upon? So now we can build out our strategies. So we had this capability before, but we've expanded it. So we may have a strategy that's simply open up an incident ticket, or start the process to fail over, or initiate a work from home strategy, whatever the case may be. Now, when we look at the particular strategy here, we actually have the ability, in addition to capturing all this detail and information that you see here, we actually have the ability to create specific tasks. So again, a mature organization, a mature program, they may have, those standard tasks that are going to be executed regardless of what caused the event. But you may have specific tasks that you execute for a particular scenario or a particular strategy. So for example, the business may have different tasks or a different way of responding if it was an IT outage versus if it was a fire. Initiating a work from home is gonna have certain set of tasks that need to be performed versus if you lose access to your network. So this gives you that ability to really kind of build out those strategies, but then at the same time capture those specific recovery tasks. So now if we actually look at this particular task, it will actually default and assign the recovery strategy associated to that task. And again, this is going to be leveraged from a reporting perspective. It's also going to be important when we actually activate the plans. What scenario is causing this invocation, and what strategy are we going to execute? Now we can start to apply filters in a manual or automated fashion that says, hey, based on this scenario, based on this strategy, show me the task that I need to execute right now. So that is really the key feature and functionality. And again, I'm going to go back here and I'm just going to kick this through the workflow process. So we'll go ahead and we will approve this. And again, you'll notice a couple things. We have that option to archive our plan and store it for historical purposes. So that is the planning capability. And again, I'll show you how we can manage some of those components from a BCM admin perspective. So I mentioned before, we added the capability to go in and determine, the plan authoring type. So this is where we would be able to say, well, again, we're just starting off. We just want to get some plans in place. We have some Word documents and we want to document that information in the system right now, today. And then we'll work towards, continuous improvement. So you may say, we just want to leverage documentation. So instead of having to configure the form and the layout, it's simply a drop-down option. And you can pick that, and that's going to dynamically change what you see when you build a new plan off of this template. Or you may say, hey, we approach this from an all hazards approach. So regardless of what caused the incident or the reason why we've activated a plan, we're going to perform the same task. So maybe we just want to document the scope, what's critical to this plan, any supporting details, and then document our task. Or you may just plan per scenario. So again, the idea is giving you that flexibility to really kind of hone in on how your organization plans and align with your level of maturity. So going back, the last area that we really want to kind of focus on and what is really important to organizations is, the ability to exercise and the ability to have confidence in your plans at time of an event. So when you activate in real time. So now we'll look at, what are some of the new features that we're releasing as part of crisis management. So one of the key items in this release is giving you the ability that when you create an exercise or when you create an actual event, the ability to identify and assign impacted items such as an IT asset or a business process or a service, and then let that drive the scope of the event. So what you'll see here in a moment is the ability to say, we know we have an incident and it's impacted this asset. Now the system's going to be able to look at that and determine what plans you need to activate. And then we've changed the layout a little bit to present the data in kind of a hierarchy of impacted assets, activated plans, and then recovery tasks that you need to perform. We've also added the ability to create ad hoc tasks. So during an exercise, we may have tasks that were unplanned for. So now we can create an ad hoc task. We can associate it to the impacted dependency or associate it to the plan. So that way, during the heat of the event or during an exercise, we're not losing track of any work that we had to do that we didn't account for previously. We may also create remediation tasks. So, again, we may be going through an exercise, we're documenting any issues, areas for improvement, and we may want to track those as ad hoc event tasks, and they may be classified as remediation tasks as well. So we've added some additional capability there as well. So now we're excited to jump back into the demo here, and we'll show you kind of how that looks. So let's go ahead, and for today, we'll start an exercise. So we've also added some additional ability here as well. So when the users who are responsible for creating and managing these exercises, when they create an exercise, we actually will present them with this pop-up here where they can start to capture certain details pertaining to the event. So we'll go ahead and say this is a new recovery exercise. We can select our method here as well. So we've expanded the options here also. So an exercise can be any number of things. So for business continuity, we're doing a lot of walkthroughs and tabletops and simulations. For DR exercises, we're doing fully functional failover. So we're actually failing over from a primary to secondary. Then we can go ahead and we can select what's the planned start date, and then we can add any additional description here. So as part of the exercise, again, we're still giving you the capability to capture all of the key details that you need for an exercise. So assigning it out, completing all of your planning details. So when are we plan to execute this exercise? Who's going to be approving this from a pre and post exercise? So that's where we have kind of our result approvers come into play. And then we can define our scope. So it's already set to functional. That's based on our choice on the previous screen. We can document all of our goals and objectives. So this is really nice because within a single details tab, we can really collect all the detail and information we need for our exercise scope and objectives document, as well as our exercise results. And for those organizations that need to provide this type of evidence for internal, external audits, we can really point those teams to the details, or we'll be able to provide rich reporting and dashboarding that are showing us, what was tested, when it was tested, what were the results, what types of exercises are we doing, so on and so forth. So this is where we'll document those results here. So in the Paris release, we provided the ability to simply go in and say, here are the plans that we need to activate. And at time of a real event, being able to quickly do that, was advantageous. Now we've added the ability to say, well, let's think about this. Most of the times it starts with an impact, whether it's a location, whether it's a business process or a service. So now we can actually go in and we can say, what's actually been impacted. There's opportunity to automate some of this as well and integrate with other areas on the platform, like incident management, for example. But in the case of an exercise, we may simply say what's been impacted. And that's where we can go in and we can select and we can say, okay, we know we have applications that are being impacted. Now, this is going to show me all of my applications. So I can go in and I can do a quick search. So maybe we want to look for those SAP applications. And maybe we want to say, well, we're having an issue with our SAP financials. And then we can go ahead and save that. And you'll notice that it's going to add that impacted application to my event. Now, the second piece is what plans do we need to activate based on those impacts? Now, I could have skipped that first step and I could have gone directly to adding a plan. That would have given me the ability to simply click and say, show me all the plans that are in my organization. And then I could just pick and choose. Now, if I go back, maybe I just want to see the plans associated to those impacted assets. So now I could go in and I could say, okay, in this case, we only have one impacted asset. In real life, we may have multiple impacted assets. But for today, we'll just pick our SAP financials. Now what's going to happen is when I click next, it's going to show me what is the plan associated with that impacted asset. So again, imagine we had 50 impacted assets. We'd be able to see all of the related plans. And then we can select the plan and we can add that to our event. So what that does here is for each impacted asset, we can now see what's the state of that asset. So it's currently has not been recovered. And then we can show that hierarchy view. So the impacted asset, we have our SAP disaster recovery plan that we've activated. And then here are the tasks that we need to execute. So it's a nice view, and it's going to really allow you to focus in on recovering the assets that have been impacted that led to the activation. And then from here, we can drill into the task, and we can work the task here. So we can assign it out. So it may be assigned to someone already. We could assign it out to a ServiceNow support group. So again, maybe database team is going to work on this, or a network team is going to work on this task. We can track, when did we start this task? How long did it take us? When did we end it? And then we can describe any other details, as well as attach any evidence. So a lot of times in exercises, we need that evidence for audit purposes, whether it's a screenshot that we actually made the DNS change and we're not just saying we did as part of the exercise. So we can track all of our tasks here. As we start going through tasks and closing those out, that could then roll up and tell us what's the state of the plan, and then ultimately what's the state of the impacted asset. And then we can track, again, how much time it's taking us to perform each of these tasks and ultimately recover the asset. And then that's going to be critical metrics to be able to determine whether or not we are in compliance with our recovery time objective requirements. So we're looking at what our capabilities are, what we can actually achieve. And then last but not least, the ability to add an ad hoc task. So again, during an exercise, there's going to be things that come up that we're not accounted for. And we don't want to lose track of that, because business continuity management is always about continuous improvement, and exercising your plans is a big part of that. So we can document and track these event tasks. And again, we may want to add, a task type to specify whether or not this is truly an ad hoc task, a remediation, an after actions task, or even potentially an issue that we want to track as part of our exercise. So that is some of the new capabilities with our crisis management application that just was released. So that takes us back to the PowerPoint, and that really covers all of the new key features and functionality that came out as part of Quebec just last week. So now I'll turn it back to Aaron, and I believe we may have Ashwin on the line as well. He is our business continuity management product manager, who will also be able to walk us through some additional features and capabilities that tie into our overall crisis management strategy.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. And so we don't have Ashwin on the line yet, but we do have one question that came across, and it was, can the relationships in the dependency assessment of a BIA be automatically populated from existing CMDB relationships?
That's a great question, and that is actually something that is currently in progress. So, if I understood the question correctly, it's essentially, can we reuse the CMDB dependencies? And that's really one of the benefits of the platform, and being able to leverage all of that data. So in our next release, also part of Quebec release, scheduled for June of this year, we will actually have that capability where we can reuse and pull in those dependencies. Because really, two things. One, we really are working towards the configuration management database, or your CMDB, being the gold source of data, as well as various dependencies. So we want to leverage as much of that data. Organizations doing service mapping, we're going to be able to benefit from all of that hard work as well, and we're going to be able to pull those dependencies in. In addition to that, we still are going to provide the flexibility for business continuity teams or disaster recovery teams to manually add additional dependencies. So that way you kind of have a business continuity view into your dependencies, whether they are done manually or whether or not they're coming from the CMDB or service mapping. And the reason we do that is because, within our dependency view in the CMDB, this is kind of, it's showing anything and everything related to the various assets. So it's kind of a day to day. What does the environment look like today? Whereas business continuity, we're focused on, what do we need at time of an event as well. So there may be additional types of dependencies very specific to resiliency planning. And the beauty, again, one of the key differentiators is that, we could then leverage workflow capabilities. So that way, if we're defining additional types of relationships, we may want other teams to have visibility into that, our change management teams. That way they may correct or enhance the CMDB dependency view based on information coming out of the business impact analysis. So it could almost be kind of a two-way street as well.
Awesome. No, thanks, Chris, for that. And we have another question that came in. It looks like each individual impacted asset from a plan gets their own separate activated plan for all the recovery tasks associated. Is there an approach to take if the plans aren't structured that uniformly? For example, where different tasks within a plan target different scoped assets for that plan? I can read this if you'd like.
Yeah. So no, I if I understand the question, I think, and we hear this from a lot of organizations, different types of tasks, whether they're task associated to a particular scenario and strategy, whether it's tasks that are associated to particular assets. So maybe those are asset specific tasks or kind of your general plan tasks. So we see organizations creating and managing different types of tasks. Now, the challenge is, how do we bring in all of those tasks? How do we categorize those tasks? How do we prioritize those tasks? So the answer would be, yes, we can have some logic, or leverage, workflows, business rule capabilities on the platform to say, if all of these impacted assets are coming from the same plan, and there is no, differentiator between what tasks are applicable to what asset, then we could have that logic in place that say, okay, roll this up, because we're dealing with the same activated plan and the same set of tasks. Or if we are identifying a specific strategy per task, we may want to also apply some logic that filters out our tasks based on the strategy, based on a scenario, for example, or you have asset specific tasks as well. So maybe we have some plan tasks and then those tasks that are associated specifically to the asset that's been impacted. So short answer is yes, the capability is there, to meet different requirements and how you want to build and manage and prioritize your recovery tasks.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so the feedback was, yeah, that's exactly what I was wondering. Thank you. So thanks for answering that. Any other questions? And if not, we'll probably close down. All right, we got one last one coming in. Is RTA still part of BCM in the new version? So recovery time actual.
It is. It is. Yes, it is. So we're still capturing recovery time achievable. That way, we always have insight into, are we meeting our business requirements? So we're still tracking, recovery time objective, recovery time achievable, as well as RTO gaps. So that way, from a program management reporting perspective, we have clear insight into not only the gaps in our ability to recover a particular asset, but also insight into whether or not the RTA from a dependency is going to impact our ability to recover a particular asset as well. So we still do have that metric, and that's a key piece to being able to understand our RTO compliance as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Lisa and Teresa, for helping us coordinate this Ask the Experts call. We will end it now as we've addressed all the questions, and feel free to reach out to the community and those additional links that Teresa put into the chat area. And as always, open door policy if I can help address any questions as well. But I want to thank you all for your time, and look forward to seeing you again on the next Ask the Experts edition. Thank you all. Thank you, Chris.